Good morning, everyone. So, in this video, we are going to break down one of the articles editorial published on the Hindu newspaper on 21st of April. So, the title of the editorial is "Puzzle of Missing Urgency Around Learning." So, it focuses on basically the effective learning, and crisis of effective learning in India's educational sector. As we know, in recent years, government has increased number of schools and educational institutions and enrollment numbers have increased, but that hasn't transformed into the effective learning or improvement in effective learning, basic numeracy and text reading. So the article discusses that what are the factors responsible for it and what are the way forward uh, to fix the problem. So the article takes reference from annual status of education report, which is published by an NGO named Pratham. You should see that and might be asked in preliminary examinations what Pratham organization is about. The themes of the articles are basically the learning crisis of India's education sector, the issues of educational governance, and effectiveness of government initiatives. If we see this article, how this becomes important for our main syllabus, we will see the topic social empowerment in general studies 1, and we know that education is very important foundation for social empowerment. So this topic, this article becomes very important for GS1 as well. In GS2, you see directly the topic is mentioned, the issues in education sector. GS3, it becomes very important also for economic development. As we know, education and skill development is very important for human capital formation and to turn our huge human resource into demographic dividend. So this article may be used in both GS1, 2 and 3 in mains examination. So we will see we have broke it down into three parts. One is what are the concerns associated with India's educational sector. Second is what are the factors responsible for it and what are the way forward for to fix the problems. So first is concern. What are the concerns this editorial discusses? The first is foundation learning crisis. What this is about, that there are large section of students who are not able to read the basic text. Reading ability is that even the fifth standard students were not able to read third standard text and issues with basic numeracy. The numerical ability is very important to develop in our school children, so that that becomes the foundation for their higher educations. The second is policy implementation mismatch. As we know that government had issued new education policy in 2020, but there have been some mismatch as far as their execution and implementation go. So there are implementation issues regarding the targets and the different schemes we have set under new education policy. Second is invisible outcomes ignored. What invisible outcomes ignored means, there have been a massive increase in educational infrastructure in recent years. There have been number of schools increased and different facilities in those schools increased, but actual learning which cannot be, sometimes it becomes very difficult because it's not tangible to, you cannot actually see or touch the actual learning. So there have been in an issues, and we do not have very effective tools to measure the actual learning. So actual learning hasn't been as good as the improvements in our infrastructure. Third and fourth important is equity gaps. There have been issues, and our rural and marginalized sections of our country hasn't received as good education, and their actual learning hasn't been as good as it has been in our urban centers. Fifth is, it also discusses that if we do not focus on the actual learning in our school in educational institution, that puts our demographic dividend at risk, because the poor learning outcomes threaten India's future human capital formation. So these are the important concerns this editorial discusses about, and also discusses the underlying causes or factors responsible for it. The first one is governance gaps. What governance gaps means, the educational government system hasn't been monitoring effectively the educational policies. There have been a lack of accountability and poor coordination between center and state governments. Second is political economy. With regard to educational policy, what political economy means, most of the times in state, especially at the ground level, the focus has always been on short-term popular measures. Suppose there has no, what this means is, suppose there is a village जहाँ पर कोई स्कूल नहीं है. So what the political leadership will do, they will establish an educational institution, एक स्कूल वहाँ पर बना देंगे, but their focus will only be on constructing the school, not on the actual tools for effective learning. यानी कि वहाँ पे जो क्वालिटी टीचर्स और जो अदर फैसिलिटीज हैं इफेक्टिव लर्निंग के लिए, उस पर फोकस नहीं रहता है, क्योंकि वो टेंजिबल नहीं है, जिसकी वजह से वो पॉपुलिस्ट पॉलिसी स्पेक्ट्रम के अंडर नहीं आती है. The third one is social perception. Mostly what happens is our recent times our focus has been too much quantitative in terms of education sector ki we have to increase our literacy, we have to increase the number of schools. तो परसेप्शन सोशल ऐसा बन गया है कि इफ किड्स आर और चिल्ड्रन आर गोइंग टू द स्कूल्स, दैट मीन हमारा एजुकेशन सेक्टर अच्छा जा रहा है, बट दैट्स नॉट द ट्रूथ. एक्चुअल लर्निंग शुड बी द फोकस. तो जिसकी वजह से ये एक फैक्टर बन जाता है कि एक बार स्कूल भेज देने, वंस दे सेंड आवर चिल्ड्रन स्कूल, दैट देयर जॉब इज डन. Fourth important is administrative inertia. The bureaucracy also have been focusing too much on inputs like which we discuss on infrastructure and enrollment, and not focusing enough on actual outcomes of enrollment. Agar if there have been an increase in enrollment, does that also transformed into the actual outcomes or effective learnings, or it is just about the number of students we are able to send to schools? The fifth important is data underutilization. Means there have been ASER reports, there also have been National Achievement Survey, NAS surveys, which highlight the deficits कि कहाँ पर क्या प्रॉब्लम चल रही है. Every 2 year Pratham actually publishes ASER report, and which actually every 2 year whenever it publishes its report focuses on actual outcomes gaps, and those haven't effectively utilized by governance, educational governance system to correct our mistakes. And in the third part, the article discusses various solutions in order to fix actual learning. So the first one is obviously whatever issues and the factors we have discussed, our solution also should be focused on them. This is also one of the important ways to write an answer. When we are writing both the causes or the factors, then our solutions should also be focused on them. So the first one is shifting focus to outcomes. What it means is we have to shift our focus from increasing the number of enrollment to measurable learning achievements. Means we also have to do massive comprehensive surveys in schools to know why our children or our students are not able to read the basic text or understand the basic arithmetic. Second is strengthening the monitoring. So there have been some tools like national achievement surveys or school quality index and all those, but we have to make them comprehensive, and if we get any surveys, utilize effectively to improve the situation. Third one is outcome based incentives. What outcome based incentive means, if central government is giving fundings to states for their educational governance, if any state does better, we have to increase the funding. That will give enough motivation for the states to work better in order to fix the problems. Fourth one is community participation. There haven't been a very good, in one of the most important problems in India's education sector have been a lack of local community and family and society interactions. There should be in management committee so that then discuss what are the children's facing, what are the problems they are facing in, so that they can work together. Fourth one is ethical governance, means the administrator working in educational sector must focus on outcomes and show their commitment towards the goals associated with actual and effective learning. Fifth one is constructive pedagogy. What it means, pedagogy means, constructive pedagogy means encouraging the students to build their own understanding, not just spoon feeding. One of the biggest critics of our India's education system we have been spoon feeding. We are not giving them enough ideas or enough tools to develop their own constructive thinking. So we have to start thinking in this direction as well. So these are the important three parts of the editorial which discusses. First one was the actual concern we are facing in our educational sector, and what are the important factors responsible for it, and what are the solutions we can implement in order to fix the problems of effective learning. So based on this article, I have also developed one model questions. The way UPSC asks questions. The question is: despite significant policy framework like NEP 2020 and missions like Nipun Bharat, India continues to face a learning crisis at the foundation level. Analyze the regions and suggest a way forward. So, if suppose UPSC asks this question in 150 words, at least 5 points in our first part, the causes or the factors, and 5 solutions with examples that will put us in a good category like 4 to 4.5 marks out of 10 in these questions. So this was one of the articles published on 21st of April focusing on educational sectors, and we will be coming back for another articles.